we wanted it to be kind of mission-led. We didn't want to do another 10 years of our life just buying something for $1 and selling it for $2. We wanted to do something that would have an impact. And so what this business, like the mission is all about climate change. Climate change is the most existential threat that the world has at the moment. And if you take away the noise of Trump and Brexit and all the silly things, the core is this planet. We are wrecking this planet, and we are doing it with gay abandon, and that is the reality.
So today we have Norman Crowley with us. Thanks so much for inviting us up to your beautiful office for a chat. Norman is a self-confessed serial entrepreneur and has had way too many businesses to list. So I'll just let him sort of start that.
So I guess, so I started my kind of entrepreneurial journey when I was 15. And so I grew up in kind of West Cork where, in the 80s where money was tight and no one ever had any money. And in watching kind of US TV shows, you kind of get this desire that this is, that other people have this amazing life and kind of we don't, And I guess at 15, when I was about 12 or 13, my dad taught me how to weld.
That's so funny. My dad's a welder.
Is he?
He tried to teach me how to weld.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and I don't know. There was something about welding. It was just the kind of simplicity of it,
Yeah.
And so I started welding, and we were in a farming community, and so there was a lot of demand for welding, and so I grew up that business. I still stayed in school, but I was kind of growing that business up, doing jobs, like bringing other people in to do jobs with me, all that kind of stuff. And so by the time I was 17 and I kind of did my leaving cert, I had a team together, and literally the day I finished the leaving cert, I finished my last exam at 11 and I went to work, and so I was working in, and the work was coming in constantly. And by the time I was 20, I was kind of sick of doing that. Because it was just the same every day, and it was kind of hard work. And I liked technology a lot, and there wasn't enough technology in it, I guess. And so we sold that business, not for a lot of money, but we sold it, and that was the first kind of exit as well. And so when you...
The welding company?
The welding company,
sold the welding
So when I was 20, we did that. And so, you start to get a bug of, if you build it, then you can make money, and somebody can buy that off you. And so
it's funny whenever my dad always made gates and made everything, made the north, south, east and west, and he made loads of things. But he then went in teaching, and it was guys that didn't get into, maybe they didn't go on for further education, so they went and got trades. So my dad used to teach them, and I can remember one day saying to my dad, because he had loads of work at home that he always done, and he hated doing it because he was working all day. And I said, why don't you take 3 people out of here, get your own place? And he never done it. And I used to say to him all the time, you take the best out of your class, give them work, because that's what they want.
There's a kind of fear and confidence there, isn't there? I've seen that in somebody recently, is you have so much capability and yet you are afraid. And then when you do it a lot, and not everything we do works, but when you know that it works and can work, then you look at fear differently. You look at it as kind of irrational. Why would you be afraid of that? And I remember somebody saying to me a while ago that they did a study of entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs, one of the key, lots of traits are different in entrepreneurs, but one of the traits they found that was key was attitude to risk, is that they could see risk, but they couldn't see it as clearly as everybody else could. Right? And another friend of mine said a great thing. He said, kind of definition of an entrepreneur, he said you have to be stupid enough to get into it and smart enough to get out of it. Right?
Yeah, well, I suppose that's a good quote. I'm going to keep that one. So that was your first exit then?
That was the first exit. It didn't feel like an exit because it was a deal that was done very quickly.
You didn't know what you were doing.
I didn't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there was no big lawyers' offices or any of that. And then, so we wanted to get into kind of software and technology and that kind of thing, and so
how did you spot that though? Was it just by chance, or were
it's
you
more
thinking?
A core thing. We love tech, even now, we if you're something we wanted the kind of car with the most tech, and now you have to have an electric car with electric tech, and we read tech stuff all the time, and that's like a core. Like I was writing code when I was 13 in my bedroom in the farm in West Cork. Like, so it's in the, you know, it's a core, and for me, it's something that I like a lot. And so, so then we wanted to get into computers and software and that kind of thing. And near us in Cork, in Macroom, was a company that made PCs, even back then. And they were struggling to sell them. So we knew people, and so we just started selling PCs, and we didn't know anything about selling PCs. But we were good at selling them. And so we sold a lot of PCs and servers and that kind of thing. And I guess at the time as well, like offices, like auctioneers' offices, all of a sudden would need a computer, whereas they didn't need a computer before. And they had auctioneering software, and pubs had computers and things like that. So we started off doing that. And then software, you know, we discovered we were in software then, because there's no point in selling a computer without selling some software. And then we discovered the internet around 97, and the internet in 97 was just crap. Like it was just.
We plugged it, had the cord running from the phone all the way down the line.
And you could barely kind of see anything or much.
It took forever to load.
You know.
Yeah.
But what was amazing was we understood it to be a common platform that everyone could use, and also that there was a server that had a lot of information, and you could access that. So our view of it was different to a lot of people's view was, you know, I can look at porn on this, or I can, I don't know, gamble on this. Like gambling and porn were two of the big things in the beginning, whereas we were much more, you know, you could access a service on this. Like, and so the first project we did was called LawLink, which is a lot more boring than gambling and porn, where you could access the land registry in Ireland if you were a lawyer. So you could dial up and access the land registry. Brilliant. And so it was very tangible, but it became huge.
But it also, like, it probably was a novelty, and then like, what? You can find that out, and then you're checking things out, and then and then next thing it just explodes.
And it was the beginnings of that leap too, right? Because a lawyer at the time a lawyer in Clonmel would have to go to Dublin to check the land registry and pay somebody to stand around and get a folio and get a number and you know. And whereas it was just click, answer, done, you know.
Oh, like I remember even standing in Portadown, like waiting to get my car tax, like for a full day. Like 9 hours, like you just took your number and you just sat there and you just waited the whole day, and you had to queue up, and then you had to go get your, you know, if you lost that ticket or anything, you'd just be like, where is that gone, you know? Where now it's just like you put in your, you know, your registration plate into Google and something, you know, directs you somewhere.
Yeah, but, and like my kids the other day were saying like, how come, they were talking about parking and getting a ticket, and because they have cars now, and they were kind of like, why are we doing this? Like, why isn't it not like an app and all that? And I was joking with them, welcome to your interaction with government, where everything goes back 30 years. You know? And governments are improving, but not at the same pace. In major cities,
there is. In major, I got the app in Dublin, right? And it only covers a certain amount in certain areas, I think. I'm not 100%, but it's game changer. You're not running back to your car, you just like get a text. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and they need to do, look, they don't feel the same responsibility as corporations do. If corporations don't do it, then they lose money. Governments can afford to be a little bit slower. You know.
And so at that point then you get into tax. So what was...
So that company was called Trinity Commerce first, or it was called Trinity first because it sounded posh. And then it became, when we discovered the internet and started doing e-commerce, we renamed it Trinity Commerce, and we grew Trinity Commerce. So by 1999, it had 170 people. It was in 5 countries. So it was, and we stopped selling PCs and all of that, and we were just internet guys.
That is interesting, the way you called it Trinity Commerce. Like I think, you know, I also agree. I think, you know, it's marketing without even realizing again what you're sort of doing. You're like, this sounds cool. What was the thinking behind it, or did you just? We were farmers from the boonies, basically. How do you make us sound like something posh, you know, and something proper? And it worked as well. You know? It does. It works.
And 100%. So many brands nowadays you see, like, there are high-end food brands in Dublin that are completely made up because, there are two names, such and such, and neither of those two people existed.
I know.
It was just...
Because it gives a feeling of a brand,
exactly.
a feeling of wealth or, importance.
Yeah.
I think that's good. So then you went on to sell that company as well then?
So then we were very lucky in 1999 that Aircom here in Ireland and ESAT were both floating at the time, and they both needed an internet story because they were telecoms companies basically. And they were both told, look, you got to get one of these sexy internet companies because everyone's talking about it. So within a month of each other, they both approached us to buy the business. And when I was in my 20s, so I was 28 at the time, when I was in my 20s, I would always tell people, like in a pub or whatever, I would say, I'm going to retire by the time I'm 30, right? And then everyone would kind of laugh, right? And I would keep going, I'm going to retire by the time I'm 30.
I used to say that. I've got another version of your one, though.
And so then, lots of good and bad things happened. But the mad thing was, like, Trinity was doing 30,000 a month, 30,000 a month, 40,000 a month, 40,000 a month, not enough to retire at all, right? And then within 6 months of that deal happening, we were doing like a 1 million deal, a 2 million deal.
Wow.
And it was almost like the deals were getting bigger as my 30th birthday was looming, right? And now there were lots of things I didn't understand about having that vision at the time that I understand now, but it was amazing. I used to think so much after about how that wound up, and then bang, done. And so then we sold it, right? And so I retired in May 1999, basically. And it was as dreamy as people would think. You go into a lawyer's office, you sign a piece of paper, and you never need to work again.
Wow, that's unreal. And did you have to do an exit or anything a year or over?
Amazingly not, right?
Wow, now you couldn't get away with that?
No, you couldn't. It was all cash, no earn out. Ridiculous deal.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, but they seen the value in it though.
They did, and the mistake for me was then everything stopped, right? And so I thought the goal was the money, and what I realized was actually the goal was the team and building the team and the feeling of moving forward and winning. It wasn't the money. The money was just a side effect.
Company?
I kind of, this is a strong word, but I kind of grieved for it at the time, and I saw that in other companies after too. And we're very clear about that now, and so exiting now is not of interest because it's the building is of interest. And people sometimes say it's easy for you to say that you've made your money, but that's a bullshit criticism, to be honest.
It's actually, do you want to know what the thing is, I have the exact same story as you. I wondered how before I was 30, I was like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I did, but mine was bankruptcy. Mine was like, I sent on the dole and didn't work, and that's what happened to me. And
I know it sounds strange, but there are very subtle differences between those two things.
Do you want to watch that? We probably went through somewhat of the same emotion. What the hell do you do now?
Yeah.
What do I do next? Because whenever I had lost everything and then had lost my job, I was in a stage where I was like, what the fuck do I do?
Yeah.
And
there is a bit of as well, if you're not qualified to do anything, like what happened after when we sold that business is like it did go bust about 2 years later. Wow. And because I was synonymous with that company, I got tarred with that failure thing, right? And when you're 30, and you've only had one company.
So people thought that you still ran it,
and people said to my face, like, people said you really fucked that one up. I remember telling my dad the night it went bankrupt. I remember telling my dad, look, you might see this in the papers tomorrow, and it led to 9 o'clock news, it led to news the day after. It was like 3 news cycles, because sadly in Ireland, I think this is now cured in Ireland, but at the time Irish people loved failure.
Oh yeah.
Bono had a great story about it.
I think it's got better, but I definitely do still think
it's gotten a lot better, but there's still a human condition about focusing on the negative,
I think what I feel I've got better at and what I have experienced firsthand is the do of the turnaround, and whenever I done the turnaround that time and I started then coming back, I noticed how many people wanted to help. And how many people just went out of their way and just said, let me help, let me do this, let me introduce you to this person, and and I find that more and more, and I do that, and I know that you do that as well, and I think it's like, it definitely is something, but it's funny because in that time, whenever you sort of grieve it, it's, but then you're in this stage, so, I went through what the hell do I do next? Did you do the same thing?
Yeah, I guess the mistake about the goal was I'm going to retire at 30 and then what, right? And so I was there and like all my friends were still working, you know, my wife was saying, get out of the house, you bum, right? And do something else. And so that was a stark realization that actually this goal of retiring is bullshit. Like my wife always says, there's only so many handbags you can buy, right? And then and I play this game with people when I'm being interviewed where I say like, if you and I had a company right now, right? And we sold it for 100 million and you get 50 and I get 50. So what do, right? And then the journalist says, well, I buy a swankier house and I go, buy two, right? Yeah. And then you go on a big holiday, great. And then you buy a car, great. And then you donate money to charity, great. And then what do? And the answer is you go back to work.
I know. Right? I know that's the thing I love. Like, I don't feel like I work at all though. That's the other thing, you know, it doesn't, you know, even... You know, I don't have to go into the office now. I don't work from home and I can work from anywhere. And as I said, you know, I'll spend a longer period out in the States next year. Yeah. And all the exact same things are going to be happening. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? The same guys, some of them will be with me, some of them will be in Ireland. And it's like, I don't know, I couldn't. I used to want to retire, should be that it doesn't,
like, the reason it doesn't feel like work is if you're mission-led, it doesn't feel like work. Yeah. I know entrepreneurs where it still feels like work. And the reason why is because the mission isn't big enough. And they're not sure really why they're doing it anymore.
I think that's exactly what it is. I think if you don't know why you're doing it, whenever I was younger, I didn't know why I wanted to buy another house. Yeah. I didn't know why I wanted to even go down Napa, you know, and then I just, you know what I mean? But it just, I'd done all these things because I thought this is what you should do.
And also they're kind of soulless, like, and look, I love fancy houses and fancy cars, but they're kind of soulless. Like you buy a car and 3 months later it's kind of dirty and you'd like another one. Like, and so part of you doesn't realize it, but part of you does realize that that isn't what it's about, right? Yeah. And if the mission is big enough, then you'll get up in the morning and it won't feel like work, you know.
I know. Yeah. So that brings us up to you then done the exit. So in that period, what did, like you were,
it wasn't much time. It was kind of 8 weeks. I got the flu and I couldn't shake it. Right? And
it's probably because you probably were running on adrenaline for like
maybe,
15 years.
Yeah. And also I couldn't understand why I couldn't shake it. And then I was in a betting shop. A friend of mine, like I didn't take to gambling, but a friend of mine had worked in William Hill in London and the betting business. And I was meeting him for a beer. And so I was waiting in the betting shop while he was getting his stuff. And I was looking at people playing these gambling machines. And they were like really old looking machines, you know. And when he came out, I said, why do you... you know, every idea, I guess, starts with curiosity, right? And I was like, why do people play these? Like, it doesn't look that entertaining. And how much money do they take and all that? And the core of that was, I said, how come people don't get bored with them? And he said, oh, they get bored with them after about 6 weeks, you know. And I was like, how many betting shops do you guys have? And he said, like 2,500. And I was saying, so there's 4 machines in every betting shop, 2,500 shops. You move these machines every 6 weeks? And he said, yeah, we're the biggest furniture mover in the UK. And so then I said, why don't you get a machine where you can download the games and then you don't have to change the machine? And he said, everybody's tried that. It doesn't work. And we were like, but sure, that's crazy, because when people go to Vegas, they play a video machine. And or when they go to a casino, they play a video machine. So then we didn't know anything about gambling. We didn't know anything about anything. And so we built a machine, basically. And like the average machine at the time took about 230 pounds a week, and our first machine was crap and didn't take any money. And then we built a second one, and the third machine we built, it took us about 18 months from the beginning to this point. Third machine we built took 700 pounds a week.
Wow.
Yeah. And then everybody just went, wow.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so then that was 2001. By 2006 we were in 18 countries. We had 2,500 people. We'd floated on the London Stock Exchange.
Wow.
Revenues of about 300 million a year. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Boom.
That's how you do retirement.
Yeah. So this was a bigger retirement, right?
And slightly bigger retirement than you. That is hilarious.
And then so then what happened was
the buzz was back.
Well, the buzz was definitely back, but also were we happy? You know, my life at the time was get up on a Monday morning in Dublin, fly to headquarters in London. Then every third week, fly to Hong Kong, jump on a jet, visit 8 different casinos that we own there. Every 12th week, fly on to Melbourne. I was like 18 stone,
Oh.
Like I was just we were making money, but it was a mess. And then in March 2007, an Icelandic hedge fund offered us $1 billion for the business.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's impolite to refuse. So we said,
well, I think
okay.
at that point you're like, you can't get much more. Do you know what I mean? You can get more than that, but reach a point you're like, right, okay, that's like a goal milestone type figure.
and my business partner wanted to stay, and he still liked it. I think I was done, and so we agreed that he would stay and I would go. And then it takes quite a while to sell your business for $1 billion. There's due diligence and debt and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we worked through that for 6 months. We got to December 2007, and we were just about to close. And the hedge fund that was buying it picked up the phone and said, Lehman's is about to go bust.
Wow,
they were from Iceland. They said, Iceland's in serious trouble. This deal is done. So just before Christmas.
My God.
Yeah. And so then the kind of nightmare began there and continued.
Because you'd mentally moved
I was
on.
mentally gone.
Yeah.
And you try, when that's happening, you try not to mentally think about what you would do with that money and all that. But actually, you can avoid a certain amount of that.
Of course. You're like, again, you don't want to retire at this point. You're thinking, what
and there's a thing about freedom, and there's a weight. When you have 2,500 people and you're public on the markets, even if you're good at handling stress, there's like an invisible weight on your shoulders that's there, and it's there.
I find that whenever my accountant said to me, look, I'll look after this for you back in the same time. Yeah. It was about 3 weeks before my 30th birthday, and I remember driving out of Belfast that day, and I still had everybody still contact me because I would had ended up with everybody looking money. Yeah. And whenever he said, that's it now. He said, I look after everything from here. Yeah. And I never forget driving down the road from Belfast. I've never felt pressure because I've been dealing with tenants from I was 19. Yeah. And washing machines broke. This is broke. That's broke. This insurance, that insurance. This is paid. This has to pay. Yeah. And it was on a much smaller scale than what you were on, but it's still, you have this invisible line.
Yeah.
And that's exactly like it. And I can remember driving down to Belfast and just going, oh my God, I feel great. I was like, this is brilliant. And then that was it. And then I just went, I then moved to Dublin. I was like, I need to start my life again because, this is what has to happen and slowly. But it's on you, but you don't know at the time.
No.
Everybody tells you, but you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And also you don't have tools to handle that stress, right? And so what happened then was we had to rebuild everything from that January, and there were a lot of headwinds, like smoking ban had happened in the UK, and so you couldn't smoke in a pub or a betting shop anymore. And so there were less people in pubs and betting shops, and revenue fell off a cliff, and we had all these employees. And then the share price fell off a cliff, and we slowly during 2008 built, which was a crazy time because the world was falling apart.
So much uncertainty throughout the world,
And then we slowly started to build it back up. The share price came back up, and by about July we were kind of back to normal basically. Mm-hmm. And then I woke up one day and I couldn't feel my hand. So
right, okay.
And I guess I'd missed the kind of slippery slope of what was happening with my mental health, because I was, we'd go out and have beers in the evening to kind of decompress and drink a lot of coffee during the day. But then by lunchtime, I couldn't feel my whole arm.
Wow. And so you didn't go to check by?
We went and got it checked, and it was like the diagnosis was either terrible or incredibly terrible. Like they were saying it could be motor neuron disease, it could be multiple sclerosis. So you could be fucked or you could be proper fucked, basically. Wow. And it turned out the diagnosis in the end, and it took about a month, was kind of massive stress, Yeah. And then the other problem is nobody tells you what to do about that. Like, you can go to a doctor and they'll give you happy pills, which have a solution for a certain point in time and shouldn't be really, mocked or criticized. There's a lot of lack of understanding. But for me, that didn't feel like a fix, but there was no other fix. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to a shrink in London, and she was fucking crazier than I was, and kind of mad, And so first thing that happened was around about September, I went to my business partner and I just said, we're done, it's time to sell. And he was happy to stay, I was happy to go. So we did a deal where there was a kind of like a management buyout where it was bought off the market, and we sold it for about $500 million.
That's brilliant,
And to me, that was an amazing result.
It's an amazing result, but it's not even that. It's like having the pressure off, and like now, you know, most of probably where I sort of the people that I know now with stress, it's like, what are you eating? Are you meditating? You know, what are you doing to wind down? And I'm not talking about just going for a massage. I'm talking about like mentally turn off and just like whether it's walking or running or music. Or, you know, there's
and massage doesn't actually, like, I remember my wife taking me to a spa during the middle of the monster stress. And it was, it was lovely. You know, we went to this place and it was really exotic. But I remember getting in the car after the weekend and just going, we are now facing back into this, right? It's not, and what I learned then over probably a year is like, it's about, and I tell people this now, and some people listen and some people don't, like, it's about exercise, it's about meditation, it's about food, and it's about kind of cognitive stuff. And if you ignore that, you ignore that at your peril, basically. And so what happened in the next year was, like, we have a disease called entrepreneurship. So so we set up this company, right? And the answer to what happens when you sell a business for $500 million is you take 2 weeks holidays and you go back to work, right? But also, like, I lost kind of 5 stone, you know, I started meditating, and kind of happiness, I started to understand the nature of happiness. And also there was other deeper things, like for some reason, maybe I was growing up in West Cork, I would never speak my mind, you know, and so I would bottle that up, you know, and in a meeting, if somebody was being kind of confrontational, I would be the one who'd kind of sit back and let that happen. Or if somebody that was working for me wasn't, you know, doing the thing that needed to be done, I would kind of avoid having that conversation. And many, many people have the same problem. And through the kind of meditation, that for some reason they'd unlock that, and I became a slightly different person, where I would go to somebody and say, look, you have got to change what you're doing, right? And I wasn't bottling it up anymore. And also the effect on the organization and my friends was hugely positive, because, like, the reason this organization is so successful is because of that team. My input into that team is that I can sit with them and go, this is what you need to do to be better. And I know some of what I'm saying to you is unpleasant, but that is the reality. And they go, it is the reality.
I think people resonate. Like, I'm the same. I sometimes say things, and, you know, if I was to listen to it back, I would probably say, I wouldn't have said it like that. But do you want to know, I think people, the guys that work on my team as well, I think that they respect that. And they're like, right, okay, because I just said to them, like, we don't have time to flaff around here. This needs to change. That needs to change. And then we just need to move forward.
And also, if you come from a place of, I'm helping you here, and I'm helping the mission. I'm not being a dick. I'm just.
I know. This is for you. This is for you.
This is for you.
I sent a video out to a client yesterday, actually, and I really didn't want to. And but the guy I was working with, I sent it anyway. And I came back to him, and with the exact same feedback, I came back to him and I said, "There it is from the client." You know, and it was okay. It was one that we'd done gifted to them. So we just covered one of their parties. So it was fine. But we had it just came back, and
the clients love that as well. If you go back to the client and you say, "Listen, that wasn't good enough," right? They absolutely love that. They love the truth, and they never get told the truth.
With sending it, I said, the music's changing. I don't like this. I don't like that. But tell me what you think. And they came back with exactly the same stuff. So it's like, you know, there's no one going to be harder than the work than what I am. The client's not going to be harder on the work than what I am, you know, and that's the main thing where we're at.
And as long as you're in touch with that, it works. When you come out of touch with that, then you're in trouble, you know.
It is. It's like people, especially when you're working with some filmmakers, they're a bit precious about everything. You're like, you just have to drop it. There isn't time. And there's so much content now. It's like this piece of content that we're working on may affect the world in some way. It's not going to change it, because it just strolls on to something else. There's loads of other, we have to keep consistently hitting, like, whatever the message is, for example. But no, I definitely think as well, like, whenever I give up booze, somebody said, oh, but how do you, you know, is it not whenever you go out about your confidence? I don't know whether it's meditation or what it is, but I feel more confident. Like, I can stay in the bar all night and chat to everybody. And
the core for me was, definitely I can relate a lot of it back to meditation. You know, it was that thing about confidence. without booze. And like I would have like times around Christmas or whatever where I'm very happy to go on the piss, right? But in general, it's not an enabler anymore of social, interaction for me. And so I'm very happy to sit there and just have a chat. The other thing I find is if you're in company socially that isn't interesting, and that might be, I like talking to people who have a mission or who understand the world in a certain way. And then you don't need any booze to have that conversation.
You get kind of drunk off it. You get drunk off it. You genuinely do. I get sometimes have the same effect as what I would have had whenever I was drinking. If the guys are having a drink and we're having a brilliant conversation.
Yeah. And then if somebody isn't interesting or doesn't have a mission or whatever it might be, there isn't enough alcohol to make that conversation entertaining. Right?
I know, I did give it a good bash though. I did try. Yeah. But no, so whenever I first had I listened to some stuff that you had done before online, and I had researched you and your company and what you do out here in Powerscourt. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Like looking at everything now and meeting you, I think this really aligns with the person that I've met and have been looking. Whenever I look back and we talk about, even now Weldon, of course it's the start, but then with the gambling as well, did it align with who you were? It aligned
with the business thing. It didn't align with the real core of who I am, though, and that was one of the reasons why I think I had to get out. And
did it take you a while to figure out who you were? That's what it was.
I think that happened after too. And now I'm very sensitive to that. Like for this company, for the foundation, I'm because the team has become so good, they actually do everything now, really. My job is like the keeper of the vision now and the keeper of the culture.
Coming up with another idea.
Well, and there's no problem coming up with them. But the other thing I do is I go, even with our chairman this morning, I sent him an email going, don't say that is not aligning with who we are, right? Mm. And that sounds bullshitty, but people in here trust that the culture that we have, that they trust that will be protected. And there was a thing a couple of days ago where one of our clients, one of our people who work with me did an amazing job, right? And our client treated him like dirt. And so I had to meet the client and the boss of the client, and I walked in and I just tore his head off. I said, do not ever do that again. If that ever happens again, we will not work with you, right? Yeah. And then the reason that is so powerful is because our team are hearing me defending what this company is, right? And they go, it's okay for me to do that again. Then,
something similar happened to me on Saturday, and exactly the same thing happened. And we were putting in a pitch to win a new client. Yeah. And I haven't really told the team what happened exactly, but I just said we're not putting that in. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about, the meeting? Yeah. And I just said, look, we're not going. I said we've too much on, we've a lot going on next year. I said we don't really need right now. Yeah. It's a really big retainer client. It's every month it's looking after everything. Yeah. And last week something was said to me, and I didn't really address it because of where I was at the time, but I was like, I'm going to come back to this, and I will, and it was exactly the same thing. Yeah. And the person just had said something about a team member, and I just thought, no way, I'm not actually accepting that at all. And we aren't going ahead with the proposal. I just put brakes on there and then, and I really struggled with it at the time because I was thinking, is this the right thing to do? Yeah. But now today, even this morning, I spoke about it to Daniel, who works with me. Yeah. And I told him, and I said, look, I'm not doing it. And he said, look, just go with your gut. And I said, oh, no, that's it. Yeah. But
it's also okay to fire clients. We have, if you do good work and you're coming from the right place, you'll have lots of clients. It's okay to sit with a client and go, the culture that you have is going to wreck the culture that we have. So we're not prepared to have that.
That's exactly it, you know. Yeah. So who is it? What is this company now? That's just tell everybody what this company is, because I think it's pretty amazing.
So what happened was, we knew we wanted to do one more business and probably ultimately 10 more businesses, but certainly one big one. And we wanted it to be kind of mission-led. We didn't want to do another 10 years of our life just buying something for $1 and selling it for $2. We wanted to do something that would have an impact. And so what this business, the mission is all about climate change. Climate change is the most existential threat that the world has at the moment. And if you take away the noise of Trump and Brexit and all the silly things, the core is this planet. We are wrecking this planet, and we are doing it with gay abandon, and that is the reality. And so we felt we want to set up a company that has a direct impact on that. And so what Crowley Carbon started off as is energy efficiency. So we go into large corporations and their equipment is not efficient, and so we make it dramatically more efficient. And between when we started and now, we have saved the same amount of energy it takes to run the city of Philadelphia every year.
Wow,
Energy.
That's a massive achievement.
Yeah, and so by the end of 2020, we'll have saved the same amount of energy as it takes to run New York every year.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a monster. And it's like some of the largest corporations in the world, household names that we work with.
And how, so you're doing, how do you then, save enough energy to cover America? How do you do that?
We jokingly say most of the energy in the world is used for heating shit or cooling shit, right? And so, like, if you go to the Middle East, it's all about cooling shit.
Yeah.
If the breakfast you ate this morning was heated in a factory, so, and we've figured out how to make heating shit and cooling shit much more efficient, and we have lots of technologies in
I
was
a refrigeration engineer in a previous life, and I can remember back in like 1999 maybe. 2000, like Tesco's going in and changing like all their fans and fan motors and changing the compressors being staged in at different times, and like they were on that energy buzz save.
And we used to do supermarkets. In the beginning, we used to do supermarkets. Now it's very big factories that like make vegetable oil or petroleum or whatever it might be.
Supermarkets are sort of clicked in, even not, there's not many that you would have to go in and convert, I don't think now,
No, although the opportunity in supermarkets is smaller now. And our model
years
now,
ago with bits or compressors, you're like, what the hell's going on in here?
Yeah, but I bet you if we went, because the technology keeps improving too, I bet you if we went to one now with the latest technology,
probably
we would
could
get
do something better,
But the pie in supermarkets is getting smaller all the time because they are very good, and there's a reason for that too, that they're engaged with the consumer. But if you go to an oil refinery in Saudi Arabia, the waste is staggering, like completely staggering. Like the amount of methane leaking out accidentally, and methane is fuel, right? And the amount of methane leaking out is incredible. Like it would be like, that's why we're able to jump to saving the same as New York, is because now we're in businesses and industries that use colossal amount of energy.
You're hitting like really big targets. And how then do you grow that then? How, like, what's the plan?
So we grow along with the client. So we would acquire a client that would have, say, 90 factories around the world, and we would go to each of the 90 factories. And so this year we've opened in Sydney, Sao Paulo, Raleigh, New Orleans, Barcelona.
It's unreal.
Opened a new office in Dubai. And so the expansion is dramatic, and we expand through those clients and delivering for those clients. And the other thing is, we noticed, I guess about 7 years ago, that the reason things were inefficient was because either they were never set up properly in the first place, which is very common. According to the US Department of Energy, only 7% of things are commissioned properly. So, and we would like to see that 7%. We think the number is closer to 2%. And the other reason is things aren't maintained properly. Now, if a thing isn't maintained properly, it loses energy, but also it might bring the whole factory down. And even if it doesn't bring the whole factory down, if it's not maintained properly, it breaks, and then you have to replace it, which is more carbon, more money. And so we built an amazing piece of software called C Cubed. And what it does is this thing called asset optimization, where it's looking, the thing that wastes energy is an asset. And if the asset isn't performing properly, you as the owner of the asset need to know about that. And so the software is very like the latest car. When the latest car wakes up, it doesn't just go, hey, where do you want to go? It says, hey, how am I feeling today? Is everything okay? And I remember years ago, maybe 10 years ago or 5, I was collecting a car and I said, oh, what's the service interval in this anyway? And he just looked at me as if like, look, it'll tell you when it needs a service. And so what we're doing for industry is that, right? So we are saying, are you okay? Are you okay? And then if it's not okay, we put a number on that. We say, this is costing you $4,000 an hour, right? Fix this now, And then if they don't fix it, we have a whole team here in C-Cube Center, and they're calling the site saying, hey, are you seeing this? What's happening here? And so that has worked, and now we're either the biggest or fast becoming the biggest energy services company in the world, right? And we have amazing clients. And then around 2013, 2014, I just felt we were achieving the mission on climate change by directly impacting, but we weren't, for consumers, they were misunderstanding climate change. Like, if you think about the messages around sustainability and climate change over the last 20 years, it's like, turn down the thermostat in your house and wear a coat. Well, I don't want to wear a coat when I'm in my house, thanks very much. You should drive one of these crappy electric cars that looks like something Mr. Bean would drive. You know, you should give up meat. Well, I kind of like meat. You should, you know, you should not go on a foreign holiday. Well, if I'm a hardworking family and weather rains a lot in Ireland, then I'd like to go on a foreign holiday. So the message we were sending people was, you must do it out, you must not progress, you know, you must...
It's almost like unattainable, do you know what I mean? You can't,
and
how,
even the
how
green
can I not
people...
go on holiday, do you know what I mean? Don't make, how can I not eat, you know, meat?
And even the green people were being slightly two-faced, where they were saying, you need to do this, and they weren't doing it themselves, right? And so sustainability became a negative word, right? And we felt that that needed to change. And why? Because all we could see was optimism. Like, if you've ever driven a Tesla, it's the most amazing car in the world.
Daniel's mum just got one delivered last week. They ordered it a couple of years ago, and I think someone rang them last week. It was like, your car's ready. She's like, what? What car? They didn't even think they were still getting it. And it got delivered last week. He sent me a photograph of it.
Look, if you haven't, like, it's like going 10 years ahead at least in terms of technology.
Yeah.
And then there's meat, right? So now there are meatless meats, where we have now figured out what it is about meat that we like. It turns out it's this protein called heme. It turns out if you put heme into a thing that look like vegetable burger, but looks like a burger, cooks like a burger, tastes like a burger, then it solves the problem. And guess what? Billions can be made from making these things. And so we felt that the new story about sustainability needed to be told. So
you're looking after food, everything now?
Well, like we're our Cool Planet Ventures. So what we did was we set up a foundation called Cool Planet. The first thing we did is we're building 10 education centers around the world to educate people about this new story on sustainability, this much more exciting story. And the first one of those was opened by Richard Branson here in January.
I just seen the photograph on the wall. He's my all-time idol.
So I'm lucky enough that I was at his 65th birthday.
Nice.
Like we're lucky enough to know each other, and he. So he came over and opened it, and now we're opening the next one in Dubai in April next year. We're going to open in New York, we're going to open in London. And they then have taken on a life of their own. Vicky, who runs the foundation, and her team have really grown those. And then that led to Cool Planet Ventures, which is working on these major problems, everything from methane leaks in oil companies all the way through to meatless meats burgers. And it's setting up businesses and profiting off this transition, basically, and then using that profit to grow the foundation, to get the message out.
I've went veggie about 18 months ago, and I'm actually okay. I done it because I have issues with my stomach. But you know, it actually is great. You know, you can get some great food. You know, the food. I still eat really well. I still really enjoy every meal.
And a lot of the migration is monstrous. Like, we see meat company clients of ours now buying veggie companies, right? So one of our biggest clients in meat just bought one of the biggest vegetarian companies in Holland. Now, they didn't do that because they have a climate change mission. They did that because that's the way the market's moving. But for some people, like, it's fascinating to talk to people about cars, like, and they go, oh, look, I want my big V8 and all that, and this electric stuff is shit. And then you go, have you driven one? And then they go, no. And then you say, drive one. And then they phone you and they go, this is amazing. Like,
so is hybrid like electric car?
Hybrid is half electric, half petrol, and it's a good transition thing.
I drove one from LA to Vegas, and I think it cost me like $20 or something on gas. It was unreal.
But
and
electric
it was
is
really fast. I mean, it didn't.
And it's a great, like, in the transition, like at the moment, battery cars can go maybe 600 kilometers without a charge, which for almost every journey is perfect, right? But they need to ideally get it up to about 1,000 kilometers, and they will, like, it's going up all the time. But in the meantime, a hybrid is a very good transition area. And we would have a mixture of electrics and hybrids, because For long journeys, a hybrid is much better.
And hybrids give people a bit more confidence because it's still unknown. Do you know what I mean? Like
it's changing incredibly fast. So I'll give you an idea. Like in Ireland, sales are increasing at about 50% a month at the moment. Yeah, and so like the sales in January of electrics next year will be 15 times more than it was in January last year, and it's phenomenal growth, you know. So the electric transition is over. It's just like the decision about whether it's going to happen is done. It's now a timing question. Yeah.
So do you think so all these different things, like growing a business, having your first, you know, company, selling it and moving on to the second one, and then bringing the ones with the gambling machines worldwide, do you think that was just all like training for what you're doing right now? It's because now you've got like an insane mission. Do you know what I mean? It was like, and now you know how to move into new countries like that. You know how to set up a team in another country, tax, everything. Do you know? So it's like it's almost like you were on an intense training, and then you're like, right, okay.
Yeah, now we're going to do this.
Here's your thing, just go,
Yeah. And there are things like, you know, there's things as well about communicating that. Like we now expect our global trade team to be able to open in Hungary within 2 months, right? Yeah. They expect, the leader of that team expects his team to perform, right? And so that comes from that direct communication. It's like, we're very clear we have a mission. You who runs our global trade team is happy with that mission. You know your part in that mission. Therefore, we know how it works, you know. Yeah.
Cool, that's brilliant. So if you were to look back, you wouldn't make any changes, I don't think, would you? Or
look, I've fucked up good and plenty, right? So, so in one sense, I'd like to avoid the pain of that, but the pain of that is the thing that teaches you not to do it again.
Yeah, right? I think this is too big of a deal to fuck up, this one. You know, because it's so important to so many people. To be honest, and I think that you know, you don't want to be making any mistakes on this one.
No, and look, we make mistakes every day, but because there's a team, because they communicate properly, because there's a mission, we'll pick it back up very quickly.
And what about someone who's like going through like just an entrepreneur or a young guy who's like just opening a business or trying to sell it or going through it? You know, whenever you hit that 18 stone, you're like, what am I doing? I don't want to be here. But they're tied into this business. Just what advice?
The one I always say is, like, I used to teach people how to walk on hot coals, right? And when you walk on hot coals,
you must do that sometime, actually.
Yeah,
you still do?
Very happy to do it. Yeah, haven't done it in about 10 years, but
set it up.
It's muscle memory. Let's do it. Yeah. So, like, there were a couple of things about walking on hot coals, and they're very true of this. Is like, first one is be very clear about the destination. If you're going to walk on hot coals, there's no point in going halfway across and then turning around, right? And before you even start walking, it's kind of fill your mind with happy thoughts, right? Is what they teach you. So, and there's ways of doing that. But that's when you relate that to real life, it's be careful of the company you keep, right? Because if you're hanging around with negative people, if you're watching the news all the time, your brain is full of crap. Basically, you need to tune into kind of podcasts of people who've won, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that's the number one. Number two is that be clear about the destination. So that's about goals. But also, don't be afraid to communicate your goals. If you sit in your bedroom and write a goal, and then you're afraid to communicate it because people will laugh at you, don't do that, right? Take the goal, communicate it, even if people will laugh at you, because what you find when you communicate it is people who are aligned to that goal will attach to you, and they're the people you want to work with. And then the final one when you're walking on hot coals is keep fucking walking, right? And so if you're there and you've had a setback, just get up and walk, right? It's not over if you're still walking, you know. And people look at me and they say, oh, the success you have, you don't have that problem. Well, actually, I fucking do. Every week here, there is something happens where you just want to curl in a ball and rock back and forth, right? And you with the amount of people we have working with us, with the scale of the mission, we can't afford to do that. But it doesn't make the walking any less unpleasant sometimes. Yeah, you know?
And that's it. I used to always say, if you say it out loud, it's going to happen. You know, I've always said that from when I was quite young. I was like, if I say this out loud, it's going to happen. And then it just then started saying, right, be careful what I'm saying out loud.
And if you say it out loud, you attract people who share that mission, basically, and that's a good thing.
Well, I think that is perfect way to end, Norman. And thank you so much for having us in your office. And thank you so much for the chat. It was great.
Yeah, thanks.